be wrong here. But one thing that I'm certain of is that I have screenshots of March books. Here you go. March Book 1. It's a brilliant book about John Lewis and his participation in the civil rights movement. In fact, who is John Lewis anyway? John Lewis is the only one who's around. Wait, hang on. It turns out that John Lewis is dead, and he was dead for now 3 years. Turns out no one's alive anymore who has talked about during those civil rights movements. He was the last one to be alive, and he was probably the oldest one to actually be alive, to be there, and he was 80 years old when he died anyway. He was a U.S. congressman who was the son of sharecroppers who survived brutal beatings by police during the civil rights movement. And he was also one of the people that was considered the Big Six, along with Martin Luther King and other organization members, usually leaders of other organizations. And then one day, well, at least according to the March 3 book, he decided to actually tell all these stories. He discussed it with Ted Kennedy, and then they decided to write the comic book. And they decided to call it March. Because he was part of the civil rights movement of marching from Selma to Washington. At least he was the one who participated in the march for Selma to Montgomery. However, he decided to actually write these comic books and started with the trilogy series March 1, where he mainly focused on the sit-ins. And everything seemed to be fine, especially when, well, John Lewis got into the revolution. We start off with his life, and we learned that in his life he was actually sons of sharecroppers, and he was the one who managed all the animals on the farm where they lived, except he had no feelings for them, except for the kitchen. No, not the kitchen, the chickens. And then one day, I guess all those chickens seemed to be having a great toll on him. I mean, sure, he liked those chickens, and one boy actually asked him, if you like chickens so much, why didn't you become a chicken farmer? And that happened. And later, he decided to become a preacher mainly because the reason he saw a Bible. And by the Bible, he wanted to be a preacher. And with that being a preacher, he just wanted to be awesome and not kill them because they were, according to him, part of his life. And he would preach them every night. He would sneak out and preach them, and also they never said amen at all. It all seemed to happen slightly unlikely that way. Of course, anyone can figure out the danger of making pets of, well, pets of people or animals that are supposed to be food, especially chickens. And then when each chicken died, he would just create a grave and give them up and bury the ones he had left over. And then he would deliver out a eulogy to the people he could scrap up. I'm pretty sure that they were bored and they did not want to listen to this though. And one time he had a period of performing baptisms, and he was truly intent on saving those baby souls. But once it was a little too intense, and I guess the chick was a little too wet and was drowning. So when he pulled it out, left it in the sun with sheer panic, hoping that the sun would dry out the water that would get it living, and miraculously it did. Of course, also another reason why making pets out of food is that, well, you're going to have to ship them out eventually. If you can't pay your debts, you are going to hey, I can't pay your debts, but I can give you this chicken. And then John Lewis would be whining and everything too. And this, I guess, got him into the ideas of preaching. And when he was in high school, he made his very first statement, preaching. And basically, lots of other things seemed to happen while he was away too. When he tried to get into Troy State, which at the time was a big white-only school of colleges, he just sent a letter to Dr. Martin Luther King, and then, well, he said the only way was to do this. You have to sue Troy State, and you aren't old enough to do that yet. However, your parents are, and whoever your parents are, they're going to be mad welcome too. Because right now, if your parents are old enough, then they can do it. But you got to know that you could be bombed, you can be persecuted, and everything. So be careful on what you know, and just talk this over with your parents. Because your parents are the ones who's going to do the whole thing, not you. And so he did that, but then his family was like, okay, I'm all for it, let's go. But then later they realized what was going to happen to them if they gave into all of this, and they were starting to worry about it, and they say, no, we do not want to risk being bombed, we do not want to risk being dead, it's better to be sick. Yeah. I guess it's better to be segregated and living, I guess. If you were some of the people who were very scared of dying, and I am very scared of dying, except until I'm probably 82. And eventually, I guess you will eventually find out about Gandhi, who literally just put rags around his, well, just put a rag like as an underwear, and then just used that, and like that, he pulled down the whole entire British Empire with pace, with the salt march, and from that, he just grabbed the salt off the ground, and from then on, he violated the law. Also, it's a violation to just pick salt from the sea. And later, when we actually start the novel itself, we finally find out that it's mainly about the sit-ins. We talk about the sit-ins. Everything's literally about the sit-ins. He becomes like Snake happens, and he decides that he wants to participate in the sit-ins, and then they start to segregate the sit-ins. They literally close everything, and then everyone hates them, humiliate them. They even do that for practice, like an African American literally just dumps like pudding on another African American for practice so that they don't segregate. John Lewis sometimes had to laugh because it was kind of weird for a considered white person to do the job, but then a black person would literally just do the thing. They would try to break each other, and I had to seriously laugh though because like this was weird. African American trying to provoke an African American. I mean, that's probably not hard, but when you're trying to do it as if you are an American, at least 2 and 2, and has relationships of ancestry to directly to the UK, then I guess that would feel a little weird and you'd have to laugh. Some people had to quit because they can't be non-violent. And then eventually the sentence happened, and as a test one, they just said, "Can we come in?" "No." "Okay, bye." After talking to the manager, of course. And then that happened again. And then when they finally did it, they just realized that this was powerful too. They were able to desegregate everything. The theaters, not the schools, at least not yet. They were able to desegregate the sit-ins. They were able to desegregate the restaurants, the fast food places, especially the fast food places. And they were able to desegregate everything and everywhere. But we have to wait for that for March 2. But hey, this actually reminds me of one of the things that seems to be powerful too. Sure, it's powerful to be peaceful. I'll talk about it in the next episode because there's really not much about in book 1 except maybe John Lewis's life. But the fact remains, what was so powerful about this book that made John Lewis write it? Well, it turns out people like comic books so much that they really just rather read comic books than, books, even if it just encourages them and tells them and educates them too. They would rather be educated by a comic book than educated by, a regular little textbook or a little story or a fictional book. Well, I guess that makes kind of sense because for comic books, you can literally point it out, and I'm pretty sure John Lewis had a very, very terrible time with trying to decide words on describing everything, so I guess he would have made comic books a bit easier for him, and it was also kind of time-consuming. He has to write it in less than a year. I mean, he published in 2013, so that kind of makes sense. Also, I'm pretty sure this idea sparked from 2009. That was a whopper. And literally everything about these comics is that how much powerful they have. I mean, pictures are one thing, but pictures with words and pictures that educate and pictures that do stuff, that's something entirely different. And that's something entirely different that we're going to have to say, we're going to have to mention too. Because that's pretty much what John Lewis wanted to do. He wanted to tell people stuff with pictures. And I guess that's pretty much what March 1 is, about the sit-ins, at least the start of it. Maybe it's not the end of it yet, but it's the start of it. And how pictures helped us. So I guess that's the end of this book, and I guess I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!